Bad news for Mercedes. It looks like the Silver Arrows didn't get big upgrades with the revamped W14B because both Russell and Hamilton still struggle with the car, despite the latter finishing on the podium in Silverstone. Now, bad news are coming from Brackley, as it seems like the team is undertaking a step for which Hamilton complained not that while ago. With the lack of consistency from both drivers and the fact that Mercedes have all but exhausted their budget cap for the season, could we see the end of their hopes of finishing this season as the second best team? In the British Grand Prix, the German manufacturer was outpaced by McLaren in the contest behind Red Bull, with Lewis Hamilton failing to surpass Lando Norris for the second position. But even with that, Hamilton was maybe lucky to be P2 because they were aided by the virtual safety car, which quickly turned into a full-fledged safety car. Without this intervention, Hamilton wouldn't have been able to claim his 14th podium finish at Silverstone, and without it, Mercedes could have faced an even more significant defeat by their client McLaren. Given that Piastri seemed capable of outperforming Russell in standard conditions as he did on hards at the end. During the race, Russell noted the superior performance of the McLaren on hard tyres compared to his own on marginally older mediums. Furthermore, Hamilton the previous day described McLaren's qualifying pace as a wake-up call, saying that its pace is no surprise as it apparently looks very similar down the side to the Red Bull. The Grand Prix itself indicated that Mercedes still lacks a vital component as it strives to master its W14. The W14's major revision, first introduced at the Monaco Grand Prix, initially seemed to provide the team the performance boost they believed necessary to contend for victories. But they've been unable to sustain this early success. As the team appears to be stuck in the pursuit group behind Red Bull, there's an increasing recognition that the desired modifications to the W14, which the team believes crucial to reducing the gap to the leaders, are unattainable. This is why Toto Wolff, the team boss, is beginning to believe that Mercedes may need to admit its best strategy is to dedicate all its resources towards what is anticipated to be a significant overhaul for the following season. When asked when would they make such a decision, he stated, "I think pretty soon. We have no choice. P2 or P3 fundamentally doesn't impact me and the team. It's about coming back and being able to win a world championship in that respect. That's not going to happen this year. So we need to set our eyes to next year and then at all the races to come learn and develop and make sure that we can carry that forward into next year. But having said that, the regulations are the same. So it's not that you're not learning anything by continuing this car. It's a balance that we have to strike right." While McLaren's amazing step forward this season has highlighted the potential for big gains, Mercedes does not see scope for it to do a similar step soon. Wolff said that limitations imposed by the cost cap plus wind tunnel restrictions leave his outfit only able to bring some minor improvements over the remainder of the campaign. He expressed his belief that the team's performance and development have been limited by the cost cap and the relatively lower amount of time spent in the wind tunnel and on computational fluid dynamics in comparison to McLaren. He pointed out that McLaren, who were around the 5th or 6th position mid-year, have benefited from more wind tunnel time allocation due to their previous championship standings, making the competition tougher. Wolff expressed skepticism about the prospect of any upcoming upgrades leading to a fundamental transformation of the car. Nonetheless, he did note that there are a few minor improvements on the horizon and was an optimist that even a slight improvement, perhaps a 10th or 2 or 3, can significantly shift the team's position on the grid, indicating the tight margins at the highest level of the sport. Mercedes' acknowledgement that focus may need to soon shift to 2024 came after a disappointing performance at the British GP, a race they had high expectations for. The high-speed curves of Silverstone were expected to be ideally suited for their car. However, it was McLaren that delivered an impressive performance on the track instead. Despite the challenges, Wolff maintains his belief that the team can still secure a victory over Verstappen at some point. However, he acknowledges that this won't be a straightforward task, particularly given his opinion that the current car is even more problematic for his drivers than the infamous 2017 W08 model, which had notoriously earned the Diva nickname. The funny thing is that Hamilton barely 2 weeks ago asked for FIA to ban early development for next season cars in order to even the playing field, and now Mercedes are the ones thinking about it. When you look at it, it is kind of ironic because Mercedes themselves benefited a lot from this kind of concept for 8 years, and there are rumors that they started working on their hybrid engine cars as far as 10 years prior. To now complain banning a 7-month grace period is not alright in my opinion. However, I think it's a dangerous rule to play with. Yes, you may limit some teams like Red Bull who are way ahead this season from getting ahead next season, but teams that are at the bottom and have a fundamentally flawed car won't be able to start making significant changes until that date as well. They would be keeping the entire grid stagnant for a much longer period of time. They could maybe do a sliding scale like the wind tunnel time where you get different dates depending on where you finish in the Constructors' Championship, but I just don't know how I feel about development dates in a racing series based around engineering. Then we have a very common thing since 2022 that the form book is just out the window, which we can see in Wolff's statements that they thought in Silverstone they would have their best race since it best suited their car in the previous seasons, but its characteristics changed. Also, before the Brazilian Grand Prix last year, Hamilton said that he and Mercedes still had no idea where would be good or not. This could have been seen as a vague alarm bell at the time. Similarly, Norris said McLaren shouldn't get carried away with the race at Spielberg because it should be their best track of the year. Then, would you look at that? I feel like fundamentally many teams simply still don't understand the 2022 cars onward. Even Ted Kravitz was saying in pre-season that teams were finding huge chunks of time in the wind tunnel in ways they hadn't anticipated around half a second. It's just a weird set of cars. And we can see this in the fact that Ferrari, Mercedes, Aston Martin and now McLaren are all switching pole positions in the race to the second best car throughout the season. Or this can be a tactical thing, since the lower you are at the end of the season, the more wind tunnel time you have for the next one. Red Bull is the only team that understands their car, and it shows in the results. Even when their advantage is not as big due to the track layout and/or cooler conditions, they're still winning relatively comfortably. For the others, less than ideal conditions means they get hurled back to the midfield. To me, the issue for Mercedes is that they're struggling to come up with solutions for the problems they've identified. That means if they're still having correlation issues, then any solution they come up with for 2024 will effectively be shots in the dark unless they decide to test them on the W14 beforehand. Obviously, stuff like the tub, gearbox casing, rear suspensions cannot be changed, but that still leaves floor underbody, rear wing, side pods and engine cover. Another point is that this is the downside of the budget cap. It's work to treat with how close the field is in general, but the teams are way more restricted on how they develop in season compared to how they could in the past. And to be honest, seeing teams like Aston Martin and McLaren make huge jumps this year tells me this rule set, both technical and financial, actually does work well. If not for Max and RB, this is an extremely competitive season, and even Max wasn't that far up the road in Silverstone, which was a surprise in and of itself. But at the end of the day, whatever Mercedes chooses to do, it will be for the betterment of the team because we saw that they're capable of achieving good results, and who knows what they have in store for 2024 should they choose to start developing next year's car. But if they are scrapping this season, could that mean that Hamilton is definitely signing a new contract? Since we are still to see an official confirmation after it came out in the public that they have hit a roadblock. Only time will tell, but what's for certain is that the race for the second best team this season will be an interesting one. Let us know your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. Do you think Mercedes should start the development of the 2024 car earlier? Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next one.